Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Chrissy here. I hope you're all having a wonderful start to the year. And again, the year is running away like mad. So as you can tell from the title of this video, I'm going to be reviewing this amazing little book, and it's called The Book of Memory by Patina Gappa. Before I get into the review of this book, I just want to sort of touch on what my previous video said. And I know I said I was going to be doing only African literature, but it's been so difficult for whatever reason to get the books on time, and I decided that I was going to do a different country for each month, which at the time seemed like a really good idea, but logistically it's just been very difficult. So I'm just going to do my TBR list, trying to get through that list, and then maybe after that do something more focused on different parts of the world, talking more about those books on my Instagram page. And on here I'm going to be focusing pretty much on African literature books and dedicating a single video to them, because I found that in my previous videos, when I do a long video with lots of different books, there's just so much to say, and then my videos are just a little bit too long for me to give each book the attention that it needs and for me to say everything that I need to say. Whatever book makes a really good impression on me for that month, I'm just going to talk about it. Anyway, we're still working it out. We're gonna get there eventually. This is gonna be a channel that you come to for African literature books, I'm hoping. But then obviously, as I said, my Instagram page still has lots of different things that I'm reading from all over the world. And actually, I've discovered my love for poetry. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan of it, but I'm reading a couple of poetry books which I absolutely love. And I think the book that really started getting me into poetry is Division Street by an author called Helen Mort. She's from Sheffield, and she's amazing. Her poetry is so good. She's released another poetry book which I hope to get soon, but I'm still making my way through Division Street, so yeah, there's a lot there, just so much. I hope to learn more about poetry as well throughout this year, because it's just quick and easy. You can sort of read it and digest it for weeks or days or whatever. I love the fact that you can have so many different interpretations. Anyway, this is kind of just trailing off. I do this a lot. Anyway, so Book of Memory is about a young girl called Memory, ironic, and it's, as the title suggests, it is a book about memory and of memory. Memory is currently in prison, which is where the story opens, and she's the protagonist who is telling her story or her journey of how she got to that point in life in an epistolary form. So she's writing letters to a journalist who is particularly interested in her case for whatever reason, and she's trying to explain to her, and I guess in some way confess, what she knows about the situation and how she feels about being accused of murdering somebody. This is a particularly unusual case as well, we find out, because Memory is a woman, and typically, I think globally, women aren't really associated, well, not associated, I don't want to use that word. Well, murder is a very unusual crime, firstly within the context of Africa, and then secondly just globally for women. So that's what's very interesting. And that Memory is an albino young lady who has murdered a white man. So those two things, I think, make it a particularly special case or special situation. I guess three cases: the fact that she's albino, she's a woman, and she's murdered a white man, really complicate the situation at hand. And so we go through this series of letters that she's writing to the journalist, where she describes the conditions of the prison. She talks about how she ended up living with a white man called Lloyd, and we're told right from the beginning that she is sold to this white man because her parents can't stand her. It's a really good opening book to people who don't really know much about albinoism or how it's looked on by different African countries. Secondly, this book explores the idea of memory, how memory can be so fragile and in its nature, particularly long-term memory. And I think a huge theme that the author is trying to explore, the fact that memories can be very slippery and always not so well formed. And I think the way you assimilate information as you get older changes, and when you gain new information, that changes as well and can give you a different perspective of things that happened in the past. Get to understand how certain situations and being in a certain place and time can really either help you open up and unlock certain memories, but also keep your mind closed from certain memories. And so we get this sort of back and forth throughout the narration of the story. First of all, we're obviously put into the present, which is Memory's current situation, and then she just recounts different events, times in her lives where she spent time with her family. But then also we realized that this wasn't a typical family situation, because that Memory is an albino child. She certainly felt that she was odd, she didn't fit in. She was constantly reminded of that. Say for instance, Memory thought that she was sold to Lloyd because she was an albino and her parents disliked her for that, and she later finds out that wasn't the reason why. So it's a very touching story about somebody who feels out of place, feels like they don't belong in a society where they should belong, and helps to bring you into the discussion of albinoism within the context of Africa. So this book is split into two parts. The second part is when Memory is recounting the years that she spent with Lloyd, who was a white single man living on his own. She in many ways lived a very privileged life and was able to go abroad and study as well. So it was very, very different, almost like a stark contrast to the life that she lived with her family. And she recounts that, I think it really helps you understand what sort of a man Lloyd was. And he's a very sort of interesting person, apart from just being a white Zimbabwean man. Also helped me realize that there's a certain type of white man that we don't really talk about and we don't really see in literature. Well, for me anyway, I haven't read much about him, and this is the white man who was born in Africa and spent all his years in Africa because his grandparents fought for independence on the side of the blacks and have stayed there and feel like it's their own home as well, and feel a certain affinity to the land and have done so much. I mean, Lloyd in the book is one of the people who's translating certain important texts, which is, I think, very, very interesting that we have these people who have done so much for the continent but aren't really talked about as much in literature. So that was really interesting to see Lloyd's perspective, and I think Patina Gapa does that really, really well in trying to help the reader to empathize with him as well as empathize with Memory. And I think it's a wonderful combination for them to actually find each other and be connected and live together. Through that, Memory actually becomes her own woman and finds herself, not because of Lloyd per se. Well, I guess, yeah, in a way it's also because of Lloyd, but mainly because of the fact that she's living in an environment where she's just automatically accepted and her colour isn't really an issue, even though she does experience this sort of awkwardness as well when she tries to relate to white people because they think that she's white. And then obviously there is so many moments in the book where she describes people's facial expressions changing once they realise that actually this person might be black because she has got black features. Nonetheless, I think the fact that she's not struggling so much in a poverty-stricken society, she finds time to be able to explore different things. Anyway, so then Ngozi spirit is also an interesting phenomenon that this book touches on, which I think was really very, very interesting. Ngozi spirit is an avenging spirit. It's a spirit that is, I don't know where it stems from, but within this society in Zimbabwe, it's a spirit that is there as a deterrent to crime. So it's a spirit that will follow you and your family and your generations and whatever generation if you happen to do something such as kill someone, until it gets what it wants. So as the name suggests, you know, it's a spirit that will conquer you for eternity. The final thing that I want to talk about is the conditions that Memory is living in. She's in a female prison, maximum security, and it's really heartbreaking, especially the parts where there isn't any water and the women, you know, haven't showered for 4 or 5 days. But an amazing thing about this book as well is that it doesn't just focus on how upsetting and sad that situation is. You get so many moments of laughter within the prison, and I guess it just goes to illustrate that even within a poverty-stricken society, you can have a full life and living experience within that, and that's something that comes out really well in here, where even though she's so probably in one of the worst situations she's ever been in, right from childhood when they were quite poor to living quite a privileged life and then going off abroad and coming back, there's a couple of moments that actually made me laugh out loud, and these are mainly conversations that she has in prison and friendships that she has and conversations that prisoners have with each other. So it's not all sad and upsetting, and it's not cliche in that sense. So yeah, that's one thing I absolutely appreciate the author for. I like the fact that it's written as a series of letters, because without that it would have been very difficult to put the reader into context of a lot of Zimbabwean nuances, cultural nuances that we're introduced to in this book, i.e. the idea of the Ngozi spirits. Anyway guys, I feel like I've just talked. I considered doing a few quotes from here, but I think I'm just gonna leave that. And the final thing I want to say, guys, is there is a podcast that I've just found out about, which I've been looking for a long time. I've been wanting to find an African literature podcast, and there's been nothing online. And then recently I found one, and it's by 3 amazing girls, and they're called the Sankofa Book Club. You can find them on SoundCloud or on Instagram, and they also did a review of this book, which is probably a lot funnier than this, and they're absolutely amazing. Definitely check them out as well. And yeah, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the month, and speak to you soon. Bye guys. Nominated. And no, I haven't. Oh god, this is so annoying.